Hello everybody. Just thought I'd show you today what I'm going to do with my peppers here now that it's September and getting on the end of the season. It's time to harvest some of these up, and I'm going to do, well, I'm going to try anyway, to overwinter a couple of these peppers because they are hybrids. They're freaks really, and I'd really like to be able to grow these exact same peppers again next year. Since I'm not going to be certain of what the seeds will produce, the only chance I've got is to try and overwinter them. So I've done some research, I've looked at a lot of different videos, I looked at a few different websites, and well, I'll just show you what I'm going to try and do. This plant in particular is one of the ones that I'm very interested in saving this year. It was in theory supposed to be a Bolivian Rainbow hot pepper, and I don't know if you've seen my video last year about where I gathered these seeds from. This pepper in particular I'm very much hoping will live through the winter. Since these peppers were supposed to be a teardrop shaped, little purple and then moving through the color spectrum until they get to red kind of pepper, and they've turned into these wonderful chili peppers, I'm just very excited to try them, and very certain that I'm not going to get this out of that same batch of seeds next year, because every single pepper plant pretty much looks different out of those Bolivian rainbows. But what I'm going to do to overwinter this is just a really basic prune back. A lot of plants will bush out when you cut them. They'll go down to the first set of nodes here, and then they'll produce two new tops there. So I'm going to cut this down to about halfway so that it's only got half as much plant to worry about over the course of the winter while it's in my dungeon. And I'm going to hope that it bushes out, and next year I've got a nice fat little Bolivian chili bush. Well, might as well get started. I am going to cut these just a little bit up from the joint or the crotch, because there will undoubtedly be a little bit of dieback, and I don't want it to affect it below that point. Now I don't want to take all of the leaves off of this, because it is going to need to be able to do some photosynthesis with the light in the dungeon over the course of the winter. So I am trying to leave some of the bigger leaves behind me. Leaving the leaves, that always seems so strange to say. Dying leaf in here, that certainly doesn't need to go. Now, aside from some light pruning of the last few fruit and some unnecessary leaves in the middle, that is pretty much how I'm going to overwinter this plant. And I'm definitely just going to hope for the best, and we'll see next spring and summer what comes of it. I think before I throw it into the dungeon, I'm going to take my mulch out. I'll top up the soil a little bit with some fresh compost. Maybe even give it a splash of fish water for some nutrients in there. And the rest of that falls under waiting is. Here are some more of the plants that came from the seeds in those Bolivian rainbow peppers that I harvested last year. Most of these I'm going to cut straight to the ground, because I have learned that peppers are definitely one of those square foot garden things, and the more room they've got to themselves, the more they're going to produce. However, out of these plants, the one that I'm going to save is this one here, where it seems to have gained most of the characteristics of both the super chilies and the Bolivian rainbows. I'll just cut the rest of these down so you can get a look at this plant a little bit better. Now with the others out of the way, you can get a much better look at the characteristics of this pepper. These are very dense in seeds, with a thin and very powerful skin. Made the mistake of breaking one of these with my fingernail, and well, there was no amount of soap in the world that made that pain go away for the next couple days. So I'm very fond of this pepper. I'm going to leave the fruit on this one to ripen, and I'm not actually going to cut it back for overwintering yet, because in addition to saving the plant, I'm also going to try and save some of these seeds and just see what characteristics the young plants that come from that have. See if I can find something that's fairly true to these ones and crossbreed it back to strengthen the characteristics I'm looking for. So I'm not even going to harvest that one yet, but I definitely wanted to show it to you. This plant is also from that same set of Bolivian rainbow peppers. And as you can see, it crossed more closely with the red cherry bomb peppers than with anything else. But once again, it started off with the dark purple of the Bolivians. So this is another one that I'm going to try and cut down and save. Take off this little guy on the side. But there's not too much I can do to shape this plant. So I'm just going to take it just above the second crotch, above the second crotch, and that doesn't leave a lot of leaves on here, so I'm not very comfortable with how well this plant is going to do, but I've seen people overwinter chili plants and take all of the leaves off and say that that's going to be just fine. So ignorantly hopeful, I move forward and hope for the best. I am, however, taking these fruit. Here we have one more example of a pepper that I'm going to try and overwinter because it's kind of a freak compared to the rest of the ones that came from the seeds. Now these ones didn't start off as Bolivian rainbows. These started off as super chilies, and most of them maintained those characteristics. These seem a little larger and a little fatter than the super chilies we grew last year, but they're all definitely going through their various colors. These started off as green peppers and are moving on to red, you know, a more traditional hot pepper variation. But this plant here, and there's another one similar to it in my other pot from these super chili peppers, has got almost no pigmentation in it. And I find that very intriguing. So much like the Bolivian Rainbow super chili cross that I have here, and I'm definitely going to save, I'm going to cut the rest of the plants out of this pot and try and winter this one here, just to see what I get from allowing those peppers to further develop, and just to see if it can make it through the winter and what I'll get next year. Apparently there was a dandelion in there. Well, there's a look at a few of the pepper plants that I'm going to try and overwinter, and cutting back a couple of them. Like I said, these ones that I haven't harvested and cut back yet, I just want to try and develop the seeds in a little more thoroughly before I do cut back, because I'm also going to try and grow them from seeds, but I'm going to have to figure out how to separate them from each other so that I can strengthen the characteristics that I want. I'm just going to take a second and pull the fruit off of those clippings, and we'll see what my total harvest was from these peppers. Now, this is the fun part. So here is the end result of harvesting those bits of peppers. And over there you can see some of the pepper plants that are being prepped to overwinter in the dungeon. Well, that's all for now. I'm off to clean these and go make myself some pepper jam. As for the rest of you, happy gardening. Have yourselves a great day.